Parts A and B of question 1 dwells on the subject of substitutes, where product A can be substituted for product B, and product B can be substituted for product A. Part A asks, when the price of olive oil goes up, what will happen to the demand of corn oil? Since they're substitutes, the demand of corn oil will increase as the price of olive oil increases. So in part B, it asks, when the price of petroleum goes up, what will happen to the demand for natural gas, coal, and solar power? Since they are all substitutable energy sources, as one increases, the other's demand will increase as well. So in this case, as the price of petroleum increases, consumers will go towards natural gas, coal, and solar power. Parts A and B of question 2 refers on the subject of predictions and their effect in the market. In part A, we are asked if everyone thinks that the price of tomatoes will go up next week, what will happen to demand for tomatoes today? If they think it's going to be expensive soon, then they want to stock up now, as they will lose less money. That means the demand for tomatoes today will rapidly increase. Similarly, if they think that the price of gasoline will go up next week, then the demand of gasoline today will also increase, and this change in demand is caused by the consumers. In question 3, we are asked along a supply curve, if the price of oil falls, what will happen to the quantity of oil supplied? As the selling price decreases, producers can afford to manufacture fewer barrels. So in this case, as the price of oil decreases, the quantity of oil also decreases as well.
So for question 4, when a business, in this case the pharmaceutical company, expects its new drug to be sold at a high price, the company is going to invest more of its resources into the factors of production. In this case, those resources would go towards human capital for research and development on the product. Moving on to question 5, part A, we were asked to fill in the table with the corresponding values in the graph. So at $12, the quantity supplied is 20 million barrels per day. At 15, it is 25 million. At 20, it's 30 million. At 30, it is 40 million. And at $50, it is 48 million barrels per day. For part B, we're looking for the quantity of oil the suppliers would be willing to pay at $15. And to get that number, we go to 15 on the price axis, the y-axis here, and move horizontally to the line, and see that the corresponding quantity, which is in this case 25 million barrels per day. And for part C, we have a similar problem, but here we go to 20 million barrels per day and go vertically to the line to find $12 is the corresponding price. In question 6, we were asked to create the graph of the supply curve of the total light bulb industry, adding up the two different bulb suppliers. To do so, we used an online grapher. The black lines are the exact values plotted and connected, while the blue is a line of best fit through all of them to give a better idea of the trend of the line.
For question 7, we were given a supply curve for oil and asked to calculate the total producer surplus when the price is $50 per barrel. So the formula for producer surplus is the area of a triangle. In this case, 50 minus 5 is the height, 60 is the width, and you multiply that all by 1/2, so we got a total of $1,350. For question 8, we were given the supply curve for sugar in the fictional land of Sucrosia and asked what would happen to it if the government instituted a $5 tax per bag. What this would do is shift the curve to the left, as we've shown. So what the government used to produce at $30 per bag, they would now only produce at $35 per bag, and so on. So you add $5 to each price, as seen in the table. For question 9, it recalled the farmers from chapter 3, and it's asking what would happen if the price of soybeans rises dramatically, but the farmers are growing wheat. So opportunity cost of producing wheat rises because they're missing out on the increased opportunities they could get by growing soybean. And the supply curve shifts, the entire curve shifts, because the only thing that causes a movement along the supply curve is a change in the price of the product on the supply curve. The direction is left because they're going to supply less wheat because they're missing out on the extra profits they could be gaining by supplying soybeans.
Now let's look at question 10. Where we are given the demand for LED TVs. For question A, we're told that the actual price for the TV is $800 and Newhart is actually willing to pay $3,000. We want to find his consumer surplus. In this case, we would simply subtract $800 from $3,000 and that would give us $2,200. For question B, we're given this demand curve for LED TVs at $800 per TV, $12,000 were demanded, and we want to find the total consumer surplus. In this case, we would use the method provided on the textbook, which is base times height times 1/2, and that gives us the area of this triangle, which gives us the total consumer surplus. For question C, we're asked to find Newhart in this figure, and for this question, we will simply first locate the $3,000 mark on the price axis, and here we've pointed out on the graph. For question 11, we're told that Jessica is willing to be an economist for the salary of only $30,000 per year, but instead she earns $103,000 per year, and we want to find her producer surplus. And in this case, we would subtract the price she is willing to get paid, which is $30,000, from the salary she actually gets. So that gives us $73,000. For question 12, once again, we're asked to find consumer surpluses. We know that Brian was willing to pay $100,000 to fix his foot problem, but instead she gets a pair of $10 arch supports. So his consumer surplus here is 10 subtracted by $100,000 that he was willing to pay, and that gives us $99,990. For question B, if the sales tax was 5%, we would simply multiply that 5% by the price he had to pay, which is $10. That gives us $0.5. For question C, if the government could have taxed Brian based on his willingness to pay, which is $100,000, instead of the amount he actually paid, in that case, we would simply multiply the amount he was willing to pay by 5%, and that gives us $5,000, so significantly higher than the tax he actually paid.